Welcome to Digital Inclusion Week. I guess you guys have, a couple of things going on this week, maybe one or two. Welcome to Digital Lift's third annual Day of Equity. We have a fully packed day for you of webinar after webinar after webinar. And honestly, we couldn't kick off our day in a better way. Our first session is Leading with Transparency and Courage, conducted by Kyla Williams Tate, and we are absolutely delighted to start our day this way. A couple of administrative notes before we get started. Feel free to chat. We have our chat non-visible simply because we have to keep our webinars moving so quickly today. But please do chat our co-host, Alejandra Alcaraz, and she will monitor the chat and make sure that your observations, questions, feedback gets relayed to Kyla. So we will ensure that that happens. And Kyla tells me that she's built in a little time at the end for Q&A. Please also stick around for the end. We're going to give away our Managing Digital Navigators online course to 3 lucky winners. And that's enough comments from me. Welcome to Digital Lift's Day of Equity, and I will turn it over to our Deputy Director, Sky Downing, who comes from an extensive background in the field of digital equity, management, executive directorship. She's our Deputy Director here and actually started this Day of Equity. So it's a testament to her that we have a fully packed third one. Sky, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Becca. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon in some cases. It is such a joy and honor to be here with all of you today on our this Thursday of Digital Inclusion Week 2025. And it is an abundant joy for me to be able to welcome someone whose work and spirit truly embodies the essence of today's theme. We talked about the title of this session being Leading with Transparency and Courage. We really are talking about resilience, resolve, strength, courage, all of these things. Kyla Williams Tate is a visionary leader, an artist, an advocate whose career has been devoted to advancing digital equity, creativity, and community connection. As Cook County's first ever Digital Equity Director, Kyla has led the development of the county's comprehensive Digital Equity Action Plan, which is a roadmap for ensuring that every resident across one of the nation's largest and most diverse counties has access to the tools and opportunities needed in this digital age. Under her leadership, Cook County was named one of the 2024 Digital Inclusion Trailblazers. And this year, Kyla was recognized nationally by the National Digital Inclusion Alliance as a 2025 Digital Equity Champion. A testament to your innovation, compassion, and deep dedication to community voice and justice, Kyla. Beyond her policy and program leadership, Kyla is also an incredibly gifted poet, a storyteller, and founder of the Collaborative Community, a creative collective born from her belief that art is not only healing, but transformative. And through the collaborative community, she continues to build safe, empowering spaces for change makers and creators to come together to connect, grow, and shape a more inclusive future together. As we open our Day of Equity together, this conversation is about more than just leadership. It's about the how of leading, how we lead, how we show up with transparency, how we show up with courage and humanity, and how we continue to navigate the changes and challenges without losing sight of our purpose. Also, how we model resilience and hope for all of those that we serve. Kyla's journey beautifully captures this intersection where policy meets poetry and purpose meets practice. Please join me in welcoming Kyla Williams Tate, who will lead us into today's first session, Leading with Transparency and Courage. Thank you for being here, Kyla.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction. Happy Digital Inclusion Week, everyone. A super special thank you to the Digital Lift team for inviting me to be part of this very special day of equity. It is such a gift. I mean, a special gift to be among you leaders and educators and advocates who are not just talking about equity, but living it day by day in classrooms, in communities, companies, and counties all over this country. So, from the intro, you see, I do have a lot of titles and I do a lot of things, but my heart lives in humanity because every digital connection, every act of transparency, and every courageous conversation begins and ends with people. So today's theme, leading with transparency and courage, could not be more timely. We are leading in a moment that calls for both head, heart, and hands. Moments when clarity can feel risky and courage can come at a cost. Next slide. So again, thank you to the Digital Lift team. And I want to talk a little bit about leadership. So, when we think about leadership, certain familiar words usually rise to the surface: guidance, solution, goals, vision, motivation, communication, plan, direction. We hear those words a lot, and they're all true, and they're all important. But too often, the conversation centers on outcomes, getting people to do something or move something forward, solve something. And that focus, while necessary, can erase the leader's humanity from the equation. We check the box on skills and strategies, but we forget about the person who actually is doing the leading. So today, I want us to pause and I want to bring you, the leaders, the persons, back into focus. Next slide. So let's set an intention together around who we are as leaders and not just what we do. I'd like to offer for consideration a few additional qualities that, for me at least, form the foundation of equitable leadership. And maybe at the end of this, you will agree too. So, before data, before policy, there is people. And the people also includes you, the leader. And to be a leader, I believe that you need to have the courage to tell the truth, empathy to build trust, and humility to change. And those are three very important and distinct topics and ideas that we will explore together. And the body of those words, courage and trust and truth and empathy and humility and change, they also do sound a little bit like some leadership buzzwords. If you do a little work in the intentionality space or in the mind shifting space, you may have heard those words. But those words are really lived experiences. They take presence and practice and sometimes pain. But we'll unpack these together in the slides ahead. Next slide. So before we dig into the framework, I want to begin where I always begin, with reflection and a poem, a grounding for what it means to lead in the light. This poem is called Light Work. We have learned that light is not gentle. It reveals what we would rather not see: cracks in our systems, wounds we renamed policy, mirrors that do not flatter. Still, we open the window. We let the light in because leadership without illumination is just management of shadows. Truth in our compass, trust our only inheritance, and courage is the work we do in the dark so that others can walk unafraid in the day. We are here to say transparency is not exposure, it is belonging. And every act of honesty is, in fact, an act of love. That's what I believe leadership requires now, the work of light. And that's what I want to share with you today, a framework I call truth, trust, and transformation, leading with transparency and courage. Next slide, please. At its core, equitable leadership isn't about titles and tenures or talk, even this one, right? It's about practice, how we show up, how we hold power, and how we honor people. Because equity is not a policy outcome. I know we tend to frame it that way, but it really is a human outcome. It's not just something we measure, it's something that we model. So today we'll move through three pillars: truth, trust, and transformation, and explore how each helps us lead with transparency, empathy, and courage. So, from our slides, truth leads to transparency, leadership rooted in honesty, clarity, and accountability. And trust leads to empathy, leadership grounded in connection, care, and belonging. And then transformation leads to courage, leadership sustained by resilience, integrity, and collective change. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the first pillar, truth, transparency as clarity and courage. Truth is really where leadership begins. Now, I'm not talking about like the polished truth that fits neatly into a report or not so neatly into one of my Excel spreadsheets, because those are typically a mess, but the kind that humbles us, the kind that asks more questions than it does answers. When I stepped into the digital equity work, and that's 10 years ago, and then also in the current space, I thought that the hardest part of this work would be expanding broadband, because there's a lot of things that happens behind the hood and under the hood for broadband to actually occur and happen in communities. Well, so it's the technology, it's laying fiber, it's the coordination and collaboration with partners. It takes time, it takes a lot of resources. So I thought that was going to be the most difficult part. But I quickly learned that the real challenge was expanding honesty, honesty about who had been left behind long before the internet even existed. So truth does show up in data, it does, but it also shows up in absenteeism and silence, in the neighborhoods that are missing from maps, in the residents who don't fill out surveys because they stopped believing that anyone would actually listen to them. Transparency, in that sense, is an act of care. It's a way of saying, hey, we see you, we hear you, we honor you, we value you, you matter to us. And here's the part that often gets overlooked. Clarity is not always comfortable, but it should be kind. Because when you're telling the truth about inequity, we're not assigning blame. We're creating the conditions for transformation. But truth, as many of us know, is super tricky. It can be powerful, but it also can be weaponized. It can heal, but it can also harm. We live in a time when truth is subjective, filtered through politics and platforms and perspectives. So, whose truth can we trust? I've learned that truth isn't about like volume, it's about vantage point. It lives in the lived experiences of those most impacted. It lives in the stories of people who have been silenced or unseen. It lives in the data we don't want to look at and in the conversations that we are avoiding. That means that truth is not static. It actually is relational. It's something we move towards together through dialogue, humility, and care. Because transparency without empathy can turn into exposure, and honesty without discernment can become harm. So I've learned to not only ask, whose truth are we centering? But also, how do we know that our truth is rooted in care? Because the real courage of leadership isn't just telling the truth. And I know we all know someone who has self appointed themselves as the truth teller in our group, in our family, in our social network. And we're like, who asked you for that version of your truth? You could have kept that one to yourself, okay? So it's not just telling the truth, it's living also the truth because them same people that tell the truth typically aren't living the truth either. So it's about doing the work to make sure that our truth repairs more than it reveals. I'm going to say that again. It's doing the work to make sure that our truth repairs more than it reveals. Next slide. So, when we talk about transparency as a leadership practice, we're really talking about truth in motion, truth that lives in our daily actions and decisions. Practicing transparency just isn't about making information public, it's about modeling honesty and humility in real time. It means that we share processes and not just outcomes. So people can see not only where we landed, but how we get there. That's so important. I know each of us has been part of something and we were rushing so fast to get to the outcome, or the outcome was just presented to you. And you're like, well, how did we get there? And why did we make this decision? And when did we make this decision? And is that the right decision for today? So, sharing those processes and not just outcomes are important. It means that we acknowledge what we know and what we don't know. Because pretending to have all of the answers can shut down the very trust that we are trying to build. So be open about what is known and unknown. I think it's incredibly strong and valuable for a leader to say, I don't know. Let me find out. Let me circle back to someone who may have better knowledge about this. I think that's incredibly strong and valuable. It means that we use data to reveal inequities, not to defend them, shifting from justification to illumination. I think that's another important part. Like the data tells the story, the data is what it is, and sometimes decoding the data to say it's missing things, it's not counting all the things, I think is appropriate as well, so that we're not building entire frameworks or policy or programming or practices around data that is a bit flawed. We talk about our bead maps, those federal bead maps where it showed all of the connections and all of that. And we know that the map was flawed. That's what every expert led in every webinar that I attended about bead. So knowing that it's flawed, what our response to that flawed map should have been some truth. Us saying it also is flawed. And so this process that we are pulling to the public may not work. It just may not because the data isn't good and we don't know what we don't know, but we seek to know more. And that means we have to name our discomfort. And we are not accustomed to doing that. We are on instant gratification. We want to be comfortable all the time. So we avoid it. And that is often where the meaningful progress begins, in those spaces of discomfort. I too hate being uncomfortable, but in that spirit of being uncomfortable, I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about myself. That's what practicing transparency really looks like. Truth as leadership, truth as courage, truth as a pathway to change. And a guiding idea, again, telling the truth about inequity is not about blame. It's about creating the conditions for transformation. And we'll get to transformation in a few. Next slide, please. Our second pillar is trust. Now, if truth is the mirror that shows us who we are, then trust is the bridge that allows us to cross together by showing empathy, as the architecture of belonging. So trust is so fragile, but it's so powerful. I think about the ACP program, the Affordable Connection program that provided the subsidies to millions of households all over this country. And we brought people along and we helped to meet a need and fill a gap and help connectivity to come into some households, into some communities for the first time ever. And we understood that that funding was going to run out. And I don't know that we did the best job of preparing people for that. Certainly, we talked about it. Certainly, we advocated for it. But I don't know that our participants understood that maybe in 3 years, maybe in 2 years, maybe in 1 year, maybe in 3 months, you will have to then steward the burden of this cost. Trust is fragile, but so powerful. And in my example, it's also very risky. Because to trust is to make yourself vulnerable, to believe that even if someone or something has failed you before, that this time might be different. And as leaders and holders of the space and stand-enders of the gaps, that's not an easy place to be in. We talk a lot about earning trust, but rarely about what it means to extend it, especially when systems have given people reasons not to. That's why I see trust as both an offering and accountability. It's not a transaction. Trust is not transactional, it's a covenant. The bridge that we build and the weight we agree to carry across it. And people won't adopt what they don't trust. And they won't trust what they can't see themselves in. When we launched the Cook County Digital Equity Action Plan, we didn't start with broadband or budgets. We started with people. We asked residents what digital equity meant to them and had to break down even what digital equity was. Their answers weren't about technology. Their answers were about belonging. And that experience taught me that digital equity and digital opportunity, digital growth isn't just about access. It's about trust infrastructure. Because again, people won't adopt what they don't trust, and they won't trust what they can't see themselves in. And as leaders, trust requires transparency in our decisions, humility in our mistakes, and consistency in our commitments. It means showing up when the cameras are off and staying at the table when the conversations get hard. It means explaining why, not just what. It means sharing credit generously and taking accountability publicly. Trust doesn't erase tension. And I think we believe that trust is a tool to control tension. It doesn't erase tension. It allows us to move through that tension with grace. Transparency invites accountability, and empathy builds connection. That's why trust is so important. And so I ask you, How are we creating spaces? How are you creating spaces where trust can live and stay? Not just as a moment because we're doing something, not as a moment because it's tied to policy, not as a moment because it's tied to some grant funding in some program. How can trust live and stay for a while? How can trust kick off his shoes and get comfortable? That's the questions that we need to be asking because trust isn't built by perfection, it's built by presence, your presence. And in the times of crises and extreme change, presence is the leadership that people remember. Again, they may not remember what you said. They may not even remember your name because I'm Kyla and folks call me Kayla all the time. But they will remember what you did and how you made them feel. It's what tells communities you're safe here, you're seen here, you can grow here. That is the moral act of trust, not just empathy, but endurance. Next slide. So if transparency is trust in motion, then trust is what allows that truth to land. Trust isn't something we declare, it's something that we practice together over and over and over again over time. We build trust by inviting community voices early, not after the decisions are made, and by following up with consistency, not just with enthusiasm and the long pat on the back. We did it. We solved it. And then they don't hear from you or see you anymore for 5 years. Like, you got to be consistent. We build it when we make our decisions visible, explaining why we made them, not just what they are. We build them when we share credit generously and practice accountability publicly so people can see that integrity in action. And we build it when we lead with humility, when we listen without rehearsing our responses and allow others to truly be heard. I love going into the community and just having a prompt. One that's not even written down, just one that helps us to get to know each other so that we can see the human in each other before we start talking all the business, right? Trust is not built by perfection, it's built by presence as a guiding idea. When people can feel your presence, your honesty, your follow through, your willingness to listen, trust becomes possible even in those super hard moments. And we know there's been some super hard moments here lately. Next slide. Pillar 3 is about transformation, courage as motion, and moral leadership. So if truth grounds us and trust binds us, then transformation moves us forward. Transformation isn't a single event. It's a daily act of becoming. Every day, you should seek to transform yourself through some small act. And becoming means letting some things go, especially things that aren't working. Some of us are holding on in our careers, in our professional and personal development, in our lives, our relationships with our families and our other loved ones, things that aren't working. And we know that they don't work, but we continue to show up day after day doing the same thing. In order to transform, you're going to have to change. You're going to have to look at what's working, and you can hold on to those things. But if it doesn't work and it doesn't serve you anymore, you got to let that stuff go. So if it's not working for you, and even if it once defined you, things that has defined your personage, your leadership style, in this moment, it might not be working. And you may need to look inward at how you once defined yourself. And I know that that can be scary because those kind of internal descriptors, those internal ways that we've thought about our personage, our personas that we've shown up in the world for so long, they make us feel safe. They make us feel safe. They make us feel comfortable. And that's why transformation always carries some grief. Because letting go of that version of yourself that was so successful for that thing that is absolutely crashing and burning today is grief. You're like, what happened? I was doing so well. And now I am not doing so well. And why is that? And that's because change asks us to bury those versions of ourselves, to release those familiar patterns, even when they were built to protect us. Think about the structures that our parents or the folks that were responsible for pouring into us when we were younger. Think about those protections that were built for us. And they're not there for a lot of us as adults. So even though those protections were built there, in this version of yourself, in this version of your adulthood, in this version of your leadership journey, those protectors, those bumpers may not be there. I am a daddy's girl, right? I loved my father and he loved me, and he was my protector and my superhero. And he did so much for me. I didn't even realize. I knew he loved me deeply, but it wasn't until the protection was gone that I realized that I was out here on my own, and I had to figure out how I was going to be a different version of me. One that certainly holds on to the memories of my father, but one that also is out here without him. And what does that look like? And how do I navigate that? How do I protect myself? In systems that work, that means letting go of the control, of the illusion that we can engineer equity without surrendering power. In my example, I had to surrender the power that my dad was not going to come and show up and scrape the snow off of my car. It was not going to happen, okay? So it means asking, what can we build? What must we release? That moral courage of transformation, to disrupt without discarding, to repair without erasing, to hold space for what must end so something else more can begin. Real transformation begins when design reflects dignity. Progress and pain often travel together. In my story about my father, I miss him deeply, and it's painful at times. But courage is collective, it's not solitary. So I can share with you this daddy story, and I know that there are folks out there listening to me who feel the same. We're a collective now. So I'm not standing in the solitary space anymore. We are a collective of courage. And in digital equity, transformation isn't measured in miles or fiber or the number of connections, is measured in what happens after connection. When a grandmother learns to video call her doctor, I'm trying to get my mama, y'all, to do that. It ain't working out so well, but we working through the digital skills in the best way we know how. When a student finally has a stable internet connection to dream out loud, when a small business grows because the system finally sees them. Transformation happens when the invisible becomes visible, when design reflects dignity. And courage, real courage, is not loud, it's often quiet. It's persistence after disappointment. It's tenderness after critique, clarity after confusion, because transformation starts inward. If we're not willing to evolving as leaders, our systems will keep repeating the same harms, only faster and online. So we have to practice courage daily, not as performance. Courage is not performative. People can see through it, but as a promise. That's how we lead in the light. Next slide. So leading courageously in complex times means holding space for both progress and imperfection. Transformation isn't a single breakthrough moment. I know. I would love that when the actual like idea clicks, or when the lesson is learned, that like a good New Orleans jazz band starts playing so that I can pay attention to it. Cuz sometimes I miss it. Like it's like that's the lesson. And sometimes I got to hear it a couple different times for me to understand, oh, that's the breakthrough moment, right? It's a series of choices that we make again and again to lead with purpose, even when the path isn't clear. We lead courageously when we celebrate progress while also acknowledging imperfection. And I love that. I love the balance of that, to say, hey, we did this thing so good. Oh my goodness, it was the best. And then also saying that we did this thing incredibly so bad. And who was responsible for doing that? Oh, it was me that was responsible for doing that. And I kind of muffed that up a little bit, y'all. My fault, my bad, my bad. Okay. I love that balance, understanding that both are part of that same journey. When we practice resilience, when we return to purpose, not performance, grounding ourselves in why we do the work, not just how it looks, becomes super evident. We keep equity at the heart of innovation, because progress that leaves people behind isn't progress at all. And we model vulnerability. One of the things that I share all the time as the digital equity person, as the person with a very large broadband portfolio, as the person responsible for leading our county and advancing digital equity across it, I have to be vulnerable. Here is a universal truth in vulnerability. I do not know how to work my TV remote. Why does it have so many buttons on it? It's so confusing. Like the three buttons that we need should be the only three buttons on the remote. So, as the director of digital equity for the second largest county in the nation, I got remote control digital issues. I need some support. I need the stickers on it so that I know which ones to push. So model the vulnerability. I don't know it all. I don't know how to use TikTok. I'm not the best social media user because I am verbose, because I'm an artist and social media requires brevity. So I'm failing at that. So being vulnerable helps. It's knowing that when leaders allow themselves to be seen fully, it gives others permission to do the same. And the guiding idea here is that transformation happens when the invisible becomes visible, when people can see themselves reflected in the very systems that shape their lives. Because as we are all doing this work as leaders in the space, we are also still residents in our communities. We are also still members of households. So, being able to see ourselves reflected in our very systems and practices is so vulnerable, but so rewarding when we get it right. And it offers an opportunity of growth when we don't get it right. That's the real work of courageous leadership, turning transparency into trust and trust into transformation. Next slide. So here is the equitable leadership equation, what I call the equation of light. So when I think about what it means to lead with transparency and courage, I come back to this equation of light, where truth plus trust plus transformation equals light, or equitable leadership. Truth is the courage to see things as they are, to name reality even when it's uncomfortable. Trust is the empathy that allows us to stay connected in that discomfort, to keep believing in one another when the path forward is uncertain. And y'all, there's been a lot of things going on these last couple of months, and I feel very uncertain. I'm living day to day, moment to moment, like probably most of you. So that's where the trust and the empathy and the connection helps us to be better leaders, to be rooted in a framework that allows us the space to be better leaders, even when tomorrow feels very uncertain. Transformation is the act of love that turns what we know into what we do. It's courage in motion, the bridge between the vision and the reality. So, pillar one is truth. Transparency honors truth by revealing not only what we know, but who we are. Pillar two is trust. Empathy builds trust by transforming leadership from command into care. Pillar three is transformation. Courage fuels transformation by choosing action even in uncertainty. And in the combination of those three, it equals light. Equitable leadership, the daily practice of transparency, empathy, and courage, leading in ways that make power visible, shared, and very humane. Because this work, our collective work, is not just administrative, it's moral, it's emotional, it's sacred. To lead equitably is to lead in the light, to tell the truth with care, to build trust with empathy, and to move with courage, even when the way ahead is still unfolding. Next slide. So I belong to the school of Audre Lorde. I don't know if there's any Audre Lorde fans out there, but I love Audre's work. And she has in one of her essays, Poetry is Not Luxury, this quote: "The quality of light by which we scrutinize our lives has direct bearing upon the product which we live and upon the changes which we hope to bring about through those lives. It is within this light that we form those ideas by which we pursue our magic and make it realize." So, be the light. These words remind me that leadership is not just about direction, it's about illumination. The quality of our light, it shapes the quality of our impact. It determines not just what we change, but how we change it. And each of us, in our own way, carries that light. So when we lead with truth, we turn confusion into clarity. When we lead with trust, we turn isolation into belonging. And when we lead with transformation, we turn fear into forward motion. Leadership just isn't about titles or timelines. It's about truth telling, bridge building, and the daily practice of equity acquisition. So to close, I invite you as the leaders, as the neighbors, as the humans in this space to not only share this broadcast that we are doing right now and all of the rest of the talks that are going to be happening throughout the day, but to be the light in your own spaces, a light that tells the truth, a light that builds trust, a light that transforms possibility into practice. May we each keep doing the work of light so that others can walk unafraid. Next slide. So I'm Kyla Williams Tate, and I want to thank Digital Lift again for creating this space and for reminding us that leading with transparency and courage isn't just possible, it is essential. And I thank you for listening, participating, and sharing in this space with me today. Here are a few ways for you to stay in touch with me. I love exchanging ideas about strategy and human-centered design and the art of storytelling in professional spaces. So if you're looking for a speaker or a facilitator or a performer who brings both insight and creativity, I would be delighted to collaborate with you. And that is my keynote for today.
Kyla, thank you so much. One of the things that you've exemplified in this is the courage to be transparent in being yourself.
Absolutely.
Um, there is only one you, and that goes for all of us. And I think the pressure in leadership is to work so hard at performing confidence that we dilute ourselves. We
Mm.
dilute our own personalities. Whereas if we can demonstrate who we really are for our staff, show up for our coworkers and for our partners, that matters. Like that level of authenticity really matters in challenging times like this. So to hear you in your position, guys, everyone, she just won an award yesterday. I was saying, could we have your slides for this presentation today? And she said, sure. I'm actually about to receive this award. And as soon as I'm done with that, I'll get right back to you. And I thought, how humble was that response, and also how telling is it for you to be receiving awards even in these challenging times. And so I do want to thank you, just even in this presentation, offering us such meaningful tips while still being yourself and modeling that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We're all humans at the end of the day. And my job, I really believe my job is for me to be the best human that I can be, even in its imperfection, and try to connect with all of the best humans that y'all are trying to be, even in all of y'all's imperfection. And to that, that feels like the best time for life, right? So I aspire to do that always.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone, we have just a few exciting concluding announcements. I'm going to keep my screen up here for just a second. We have 5 more sessions today, back to back. Our very next one starts on the hour, and our next one is spotting scams, staying safe, protecting yourself online with Better Business Bureau insights. Here, if you haven't already registered, here is a QR code that will take you to that registration link, and we have a special guest speaker, Mel Canning, from the Better Business Bureau, who is going to present that. I do also want to say it's so nice to see so many familiar faces, friends, for those of you who have joined us today, and some new faces as well. And lastly, we thought it fitting to give away our online course from Digital Lift, Managing Digital Navigators. This is a $300 value. It's just a self-paced online course that is good for any nonprofit, governmental, library, community health worker, leader, or digital navigator working in this space of recruiting a staff, maintaining a staff, and importantly, supporting your staff of digital navigators, both practically and emotionally and mentally. Some of this course focuses on promoting resilience and providing support for those digital navigators who work in this very challenging and very just personally draining space. We're all in this because we believe in it, but it can be challenging at the same time. So we will be following up next week with free enrollments to the following: Joshua Porter, Carlos Maldonado, and Kat Zygmunt. So we will be following up with you next week. Congratulations on this free enrollment. And we want to thank all of our participants, and we really, really hope that we see you throughout the day. Friendly reminder, if you would like to contact us with any questions, with any suggestions, with any feedback or observations, or to partner with us on other endeavors, just email us at lift@digitallift.org. And with that, I want to wish you a very happy National Digital Inclusion Week and Day of Equity. Thank you on behalf of Digital Lift for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Have a great day, everybody.